everything is different now because of free agency for fantasy football next year. Lots of different players have really different outlooks. So let's go through and identify the biggest winners and losers for future fantasy football's perspectives right now in the NFL. Let's start with Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown, a guy that really wasn't super high in fantasy football drafts last year, somebody that really wasn't super productive in fantasy football last year. No. And there were a couple of reasons for this. Number one, Kyler Murray was hurt at the beginning of last year. He wasn't getting a lot of volume. He also was battling injury a little bit himself. So it just has made for a pretty limited year from a guy who used to be fairly fantasy productive with Lamar Jackson on the Baltimore Ravens. Now he signs a 1-year deal with Kansas City. He's going to play with Patrick Mahomes. I would qualify him as a winner as long as he doesn't go too high in drafts. I think there is a possibility when you have a wide receiver going to play with Patrick Mahomes in the Chiefs offense, the same Patrick Mahomes that threw for 50 less pass attempts year over year from last year to the previous year, and you saw the Chiefs clearly running the ball more, letting their players make plays on thirds down, and I think Hollywood Brown, while he can serve a purpose in that offense, while this is a good landing spot for him, while this definitely increases his stock, I'm not expecting him to be like a consistent top 20 guy every week by any means. Also, I think you could debate that Rashee Rice remains the number one there in Kansas City. In fact, with the style of offense that they run, I would say he probably does. But with Hollywood Brown, you're talking about a winner. Hollywood Brown's a winner because he's playing with Patrick Mahomes now, and he's playing on an offense that just won the Super Bowl and an offense that promises to be good again this year. So he's a winner from free agency.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I mean, I don't think it's a question that Rashee Rice is still probably going to get a majority of the consistent targets at least, because he's a guy that was 99th in the league last year in average depth of target at 4.8, which is unbelievably small. Like that's crazy. He is that short to intermediate target. I think my fear with Marquise Brown when you're looking at your standard fantasy leagues is that he could be more of a boom bust guy and basically be a way better version than of MVS, who they let go this offseason as well, where they can actually push the ball downfield more consistently than they were with MVS and the other guys because they kept dropping the balls. But that makes me a little more excited with Marquise Brown in best ball formats than I am with like your traditional fantasy football leagues.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Saquon Barkley, obviously a winner from free agency as well.
I think this is actually going to be a little bit debatable. You're going to have some people out there who say Saquon is going to take a hit because he is now on an offense with a rushing QB who's known for the tush-push touchdowns that he gets consistently every single year. I am of the opinion that the Saquon Barkley signing is going to help both Saquon Barkley from a production standpoint and Jalen Hurts from a health standpoint. I think they brought in a running back who's way more talented than they've ever had in the past in the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think that you're going to see a lot of red zone carries, a lot of red zone opportunities for Saquon Barkley, and honestly, look for the rushing upside, not significantly fall back for Jalen Hurts, but to an extent that he's probably not going to get as many rushing touchdowns as he has in the past.
I mean, I think Saquon's going to be plenty productive there. I don't think they would have paid him if they didn't plan on using him. It's the same thing with Jonathan Taylor. Like
Christian McCaffrey in the San Francisco 49ers. Less is more.
So I think situationally, like he lands in a way better offense and the division rival, like that sucks. But at the same time, I mean, looking at Jalen Hurts' rushing touchdowns over the last 3 years, 10, 13, and 15, I would assume that number's not going up again this year. You know, the tush push is what it is. It's not been outlawed. Jason Kelce did retire, so that'll make somewhat of a difference. But like, I'm not like evaluating the tush push as whether or not like I'll be drafting Saquon Barkley or not. You're talking about a stud running back going on to his second contract that just signed a big deal that's going to be playing in one of the most high octane offenses in the NFL. And that's how you go to look at it for fantasy football purposes. Running backs are going to be highly important this year in fantasy football drafts. But moving on to the next guy here, Drake London was obviously a winner. Drake London was a guy that had Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke throwing him the ball in the first 2 years of his career. And that's not great. That I don't know. I know that's not in-depth analysis that you came for, but the fact that Drake London was able to do anything with those guys throwing him the ball, it speaks to the level of talent that Drake London is. Yeah. So now you bring in Kirk Cousins, a guy that was, when he got hurt this year, in the conversation for MVP. He was leading the league in pass attempts, I think, or up there. Throwing at a very high rate, very efficient, supporting Justin Jefferson as a wide receiver 1, Jordan Addison as a wide receiver 2, TJ Hawkinson as a tight end 1.
Overall.
And now you have Drake London and Kyle Pitts both, who are going to get the best quarterback of their career by far. Kirk Cousins is going to come in. He's going to be throwing the ball at a lot higher volume. I mean, probably a 30-40% increase what you've seen from the Falcons in terms of passing volume last year to this year. It's going to be a completely different offense. Bijan is also going to affect the efficiency of the passing game there just based on the run threat alone. Drake London and Kyle Pitts both are playing with the best quarterback of their career now. Kirk Cousins has shown that he will support high-end fantasy football assets. These are two guys next year that are going to move up draft boards in fantasy football, and rightfully so. This is a big deal for them, and they are honestly primed to show out next year.
Yeah.
Hey, if you guys would, we are trying really hard to give you the best fantasy content this year. We've been working even from a couple months ago to prepare for this fantasy season. We're going to do the best we can to bring you accurate, in-depth content, good analysis, things that are going to help you win your fantasy football leagues. Our goal is to help you win your fantasy football league. So if you would, do two things. Drop a like on this video, really helps us out. And then make sure you're subscribed. We'd love to have you on this journey that is going to be our second year on this channel. Again, we are investing a lot to make sure this is really good. We promise we won't let you down. So, all right, next guy here.
We're generally very conservative with rookie QBs heading into the NFL, but when you're looking at Caleb Williams' situation, and this is assuming that he goes to the Bears, this is also assuming,
which
I know pretty bold, that Ryan Poles isn't going to be an idiot, but all signs point to Caleb Williams going first overall to the Bears. And look, Keenan Allen just went to the Bears. DJ Moore, still on the Bears. DeAndre Swift, signed with the Bears. All of those skill position assets are going to help Caleb Williams as he develops as a QB, not just in the running game like DeAndre Swift, but in the passing game. He's going to be able to dump the ball off to DeAndre Swift when he's under pressure. DeAndre Swift is a very solid receiving back. Keenan Allen, his production speaks for itself over the last decade.
Yeah.
DJ Moore, he was able to produce as a wide receiver one last year with Justin Fields, whose passing volume is not nearly the level that Caleb Williams is going to be able to support literally right out the gate as a rookie.
And this isn't like having rookie fever. You're talking about a guy you're probably going to get in the 9th to 12th rounds of your fantasy football drafts in 2024. Maybe because he's that good, he'll be bumped up to like the 8th round. But at the same time, you're talking about when you're taking the strategy of you're passing on QB in the earlier rounds, you're not getting a Mahomes, you're not getting a Hurts, you're not getting an Allen, but you're taking a Caleb Williams, similar to like we did with Anthony Richardson last year, which looked good, and then he got hurt. Caleb Williams being a little bit more polished of a prospect, a lot more polished, and more durable as a prospect, could be a guy next year that you could lean on in the later round of fantasy football drafts, and honestly might end up he might be a good late QB guy, and you can stack your team at other positions with him.
Yeah, the Keenan Allen move made me really excited.
I think they're definitely surrounding him with good weapons, but Josh Jacobs is going to be next on this list. And for Josh Jacobs, like in Dynasty, we're like, Josh Jacobs, you look at the deal, it's not that great. But for redraft purposes, like there is one thing we know for sure. It's just Josh Jacobs is going to be playing under contract for the Green Bay Packers this year. And the Green Bay Packers are a better situation than the Raiders.
By far.
You're talking about a playoff team. You're talking about a team that has a young star quarterback now in Jordan Love. Talking about a team that will probably allow Josh Jacobs to be a little bit more efficient. They also brought A.J. Dillon back, obviously cutting Aaron Jones. But A.J. Dillon coming back gives them that option to kind of run Josh Jacobs similar to how they ran Aaron Jones. They're different players, but Josh Jacobs is really at a point in his career where he's going to have to be more efficient on less touches because he's not going to be he's not going to lead the NFL in touches like he did 2 years ago. So expect him to get a lot of the valuable touches, though. I expect him to get a lot of the red zone. I expect him to be on the field in the red zone. I expect him to, get red zone touches over A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon is still nothing in that offense, but they're going to bring him back to do exactly what he did last year. So Josh Jacobs, this is a win for Josh Jacobs because he's going to a better offense, a better organization, a team that's going to be fighting for a playoff spot. I like it for Jacobs. And honestly, I don't think it pushes him up drafts too much. I still think he goes 3rd, 4th round at the absolute earliest.
Yeah, I think he'll probably be a good value, though. And I think
so,
if we've learned anything over the last 4 years, it's that A.J. Dillon is not it. And A.J. Dillon, as many Derrick Henry comps as he's gotten over the years, he is not that.
You had to just kill A.J. Dillon, didn't you? My gosh.
I couldn't help it. I couldn't help it. Yeah, I know. Calvin Ridley, this is going to be a bit of a hot take here. I think there's going to be some people that are pretty low on Calvin Ridley going to Tennessee, and it's understandable because the QB situation's kind of in limbo. We are assuming that Will Levis is going to be starting next year, and he's a wild card at QB. But with Calvin Ridley, I'll tell you what. He was a disappointment last year, and he was being drafted as high as a high-end wide receiver 2 in your fantasy leagues. Sometimes, we saw some people take him as a low-end wide receiver 1, expecting that type of production.
He was in the 2nd round last year.
And we said, hey, we should not be taking him there. He's probably going to start out a little bit slow, maybe not be as consistent as some people expect. That ended up reigning true. Now,
One of like 100 things we were right about.
And we were wrong about some things too. But Calvin Ridley going to Tennessee, I think this is a win for him because DeAndre Hopkins, even though he's still there, is not the DeAndre Hopkins of old. He slowed down last year, even though he had some decent production when Levis started playing consistently. I think Ridley is the guy. And honestly, some people who expected Ridley to produce last year at a higher level were disappointed with his production. I personally was really impressed. I mean, to be able to put up over 1,000 yards after not playing football for dang near 2 seasons is a really, really impressive feat. Calvin Ridley is still a very good NFL wide receiver. And if the Tennessee Titans have demonstrated anything this offseason, it's that their offense is going to look a lot different than Mike Vrabel's has over the last 7 seasons. So I'm optimistic that the Titans are probably going to throw the ball quite a bit this year. And in a new offense with a new head coach, the OC from Cincinnati, who obviously developed Joe Burrow, I think this could be a pretty pass-centric offense. Don't be surprised if that happens.
So looking at Deontay Johnson now, Deontay Johnson on the Steelers, it was going to be better than Kenny Pickett, but that's not saying anything. So now he goes to play with Bryce Young. And you're looking at what Adam Thielen was able to do last year with the Carolina Panthers. He was 5th in route run. He was 1st in route participation, 13th in targets in the league. He ended up having a very, very good fantasy season. I think we all know that, especially the first half of the season. Adam Thielen, like I said it before, pretty much runs with a pitchfork in his back. He is old, and you can tell in his route running. Deontay Johnson is in my opinion, you're talking about
premier route runner.
Two qualities that they share. They both get targets at a very high rate. A very high rate. Deontay Johnson is known for that. Adam Thielen has always been known for that from the time he was at Minnesota to even last year getting, again, 13th in the league in targets on one of the worst offenses in the NFL. On a Frank Reich offense. Deontay Johnson is a little bit younger of a version than Adam Thielen. And he has
a little.
And Deontay Johnson also still at the end of his prime, probably. Expect Deontay Johnson to be really productive and also expect to get a good price tag on him in fantasy, probably 7th or 8th round if I had to guess. Maybe he gets pushed up a little higher, but at the point where he's sliding that much, I'm absolutely going to be drafting a lot of Deontay Johnson this year. Not to mention you have Canales, whatever the frick his name is. Dave Canales going to Carolina. I'm going to re-record that. Not to mention you have Dave Canales going to Carolina, a guy who worked with Geno Smith 2 years ago, a guy who worked with Baker last year, a guy who we expect is going to take Bryce Young to hopefully another level.
Yeah, and
hopefully you see improved QB play there.
Yeah, and his fingerprints have been all over those offenses and their wide receiver production as well. You've had multiple producing wide receivers like Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. Then last season it was Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, not as consistent, but you still had some nice production there in the receiving game. Deontay Johnson's going to be the guy.
Yeah.
So let's just hope that they don't draft a receiver too early where we're kind of concerned about that. That would be the only thing that I'd be
I still think even if they do, even if it's a George Pickens situation, we know how that plays out with Deontay.
They'll be developing while Deontay is kicking butt.
Yeah.
Whichever wide receiver the Chargers draft,
winner.
Do not get it twisted. The Chargers are drafting a wide receiver. If it was a question before, it's no longer a question anymore. They just got rid of Mike Williams. They cut him. They traded away Keenan Allen, and they were cap casualties. They needed to save money. They're rebuilding this entire organization from the ground up. Jim Harbaugh went in there, and he was like, no, we're not going to win this way. It hasn't ever worked, and it never will if we continue on this path. And they're going to start over with a rookie wide receiver. If for some crazy reason it's not in the first round, it'll be in the second. And this class is incredible. So I'm very excited to see. I would assume at 5th overall, it's going to be one of Odunze neighbors. We both suspect and hope Odunze, but real excited to see who it ends up being.
So let's talk about some potential losers. And I think each of these guys can be debated as losers in free agency. I think it's hard to make a snap reaction to a free agency move and be like, yeah, they're absolutely done
screwed.
There's also a lot to play out before the season actually starts. But Jordan Addison is a guy that immediately, I think his production is going to take at least a little bit of a bump into next year, unless they bring in a high volume veteran quarterback or something like that. Or maybe Michael Penix could support it. I mean, out of the rookie guys that will be available in that range, they also could trade up, so that will be interesting. But right away, so again, this is subject to change. But Jordan Addison, as it sits right now, the quarterback uncertainty alone is enough for us to say he's not going to be a top 24 wide receiver like he was last year. Jordan Addison had an extremely good rookie year. And part of it was, again, the Vikings were close to top in the league in passing volume. And because of that, Jordan Addison, obviously a great talent, a great receiver, was able to get enough touchdowns, get enough yards to produce from a fantasy football perspective at, a startable rate, not even flexible, a startable rate. Jordan Addison to us is probably going to be more of a flexible player next year. It's going to be interesting to see where he goes in drafts because, again, the uncertainty at the QB position alone, like you have a lot of mouths to feed there still. You still got Justin Jefferson. You still got Addison. You still got Hawkinson. And now you have Aaron Jones as well. Aaron Jones will garner some receptions and some targets in the receiving game, regardless of who the quarterback is. So, again, that could change because there's a lot to play out.
I mean, they just traded for another first-round pick so they could package the 111 and the 26th overall pick or 23rd overall pick and move up and get a QB. But still, even then, how much are you really going to bank on a rookie QB coming in and doing the exact same thing that Kirk Cousins was able to do? It's probably not super likely. Yeah.
So it's going to depend where Jordan Addison is priced, but he's a guy that immediately you look at and you're like, yeah, that's less ideal than it was before free agency. So people are going to say Justin Herbert is a loser. I'm not super convinced. Justin Herbert last year, I mean, he obviously didn't have the best last couple of years after having a really, really good second year in
Thanks,
the NFL.
Staley. Yeah. Thanks, Kellen Moore.
Yeah. I mean, still last year, only played in 13 games, was the QB 17 in PPR leagues. Obviously wasn't great. The passing volume wasn't great. The touchdowns, not great. The yards, not great. Like, everything was down.
Yeah.
So I think the bar is set pretty low for Justin Herbert. I think Justin Herbert's a guy you're going to get the 5th to 8th round this year probably still. He was going like 5th, 6th round last year. I feel like you're going to get him a little bit later than that this year because you had Keenan Allen leave. You had Mike Williams leave. You had Austin Eckler leave. And I think a lot of people are looking at this like QJ is the wide receiver 1 there. They're screwed. And right now, yes. But like I mentioned earlier, or like Nathan mentioned, they are surely drafting a wide receiver. And because of that, like I don't think that it's a lot to ask Justin Herbert to do what he did last year in an offense now where Jim Harbaugh is the head coach. Jim Harbaugh, he wins at the NFL level. We've seen it everywhere he's been. He won at the college level. But Jim Harbaugh also knows what it's going to take to win at the NFL, and I think he knows it's going to take relying on your elite quarterback, relying on your young stud quarterback, letting him throw the ball at a high rate, at a high volume, and letting him make plays. I think that happens this year. I'm not scared of Greg Roman. So I would argue, most people would say Justin Herbert's a loser. I would say he's a neutral. I wouldn't say he's a winner. You can't say he's a winner when you got Keenan Allen leaving.
No,
right?
definitely not.
But I just would argue he's not as much of a loser as people would make you think. So,
yeah, and Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears, how can you not knock both of these guys? There's a lot of optimism with Tyjae Spears. Honestly, with us too, we were like, hey, this guy's going to be given a pretty solid opportunity. We can see how far he can take his receiving upside. Can he be efficient? Can he be a real solid weapon long term for the Tennessee Titans? And they go in and they sign Tony Pollard, Tiny Pollard. I just don't understand. Like their skill sets are almost they seem.
There's a lot of people that think they're going to fit pretty well, and I don't
understand
know
that because
about
they're both really good receiving backs, and that's really where they make their money. Like Tony Pollard is not a bell cow. He's not a first and second down running back. He demonstrated that last season when everyone expected him to be hyper productive with Zeke gone, and he wasn't.
Like, a lot of people are on the Pollard train, like, oh, this is good for Pollard. A lot of people are like, oh, this is fine for Tyjae. Pollard's nothing. So the fact that both of those are true makes this a losing situation for both of them because one of them is going to lose.
Yeah,
one of them could emerge victorious.
Yeah, if we had to choose one over the other, I would take the more proven guy who has had success in the past. I would go with Pollard.
Yeah, I think I would.
But
too.
I mean, his ceiling is not nearly as high as it could have been if he'd gone to a way better situation, in my opinion. Like at literally any team but the Titans. That was honestly one of the last teams I would have expected him to go to. It just sucks for both of them.
Look, Keenan Allen, like you have his situation. Going from Justin Fields to a rookie quarterback is not, in my opinion, since the rookie quarterback's Caleb Williams, is not a huge drop, but it's still a drop. And going from the Chargers to the Bears
with DJ Moore too is really what I'm worried about.
Yeah, I mean DJ Moore is Mike Williams, but he can stay on the field.
Yeah.
So That's the big difference there. And so Keenan Allen, you're probably not going to see him produce at the level he did last year. So naturally, that situation got a little bit worse. He's a little bit of a loser. But again, like Keenan Allen, I think there is a world where he's still very productive. I think he's a top 24 wide receiver this year for sure, but not top 8. And that's different. That's going to change. So where he's drafted is going to be interesting. Last pair of guys on this list.
Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler, kind of the same situation as Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears. I'm a little more on the neutral side with Austin Eckler. There's a lot of people out there that are major downers on Eckler signing with the Washington
you're going to get him
Commanders,
so cheap.
but he's going to be so cheap. And I understand he had injury issues last year. There was no one that looked good. Not even Justin Herbert looked good last year on the Chargers. Like seriously, I'm kind of like, give Eckler a little bit of a break. We don't even know what QB is going to be there yet. Like if they bring on Jaden Daniels and you have a rushing QB with a guy like Austin Eckler, I mean, heck yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Brian Robinson, he's going to kind of by default be a loser here because you're basically going from Antonio Gibson to Austin Eckler. I prefer
Eckler.
Eckler.
It's not as much of a blowout as it could be, but I still prefer Eckler. I'm going to say it's a slight increase. Like,
yeah,
Eckler took a big hit last year, but at the same time, naturally, you bring in another talented back like that and somebody who has a history of producing at a high level.
On the bright side, I could see both of these guys actually being complementary pieces, unlike Pollard and Spears. I just don't see.
I don't think it affects. Yeah, somebody asked me about B-Rob, and I was like, yeah, I mean, it could. I think he does.
Kind of is what he is. He's a first and second down guy, and Eckler, I would assume, is more of your option in the red zone. But
yeah, all right. Again, do us a huge favor. If you play fantasy football, we are working tirelessly to bring you the best fantasy football research, draft strategy, in-season strategy, and content we can during the season, before the season. So if you would please subscribe, it's going to really help us out. And also drop a like on this video. Like I said, we appreciate you guys watching. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you later.